So how do we go about doing this practically? How do we practically go through this process? We might as well point out that the graphic behind us is Rivendell. Rivendell is the elven city where the Fellowship of the Ring depart from. It's where the Fellowship gather, and there's the council with Gandalf and Elrond, and that's where the council decides to allow this fellowship of 9 companions to go on their journey in the Lord of the Rings to destroy the One Ring. So Rivendell is, in that sense, the base, at least for the Fellowship in the Fellowship of the Ring. So that's the why we chose that graphic behind us. In the Fellowship of the Ring, Moria, the Mines of Moria, represent the abyss. And they represent the abyss in a number of different ways. For instance, Gimli, who's a dwarf, was expecting to run into his cousin, Balin, who is the Lord of Moria, Balin. And what they discover is that Moria had been overrun by goblins and orcs and presumably all sorts of denizens from the deep. And they eventually end up in the burial chamber, the tomb of Balin, and they find his sarcophagus. And shortly after that, because of some misadventures by Pippin, he wakes up the orcs and he draws attention to their presence, to the presence of the Fellowship. And the orcs and the goblins come and they have a cave troll, and there's this big battle ensues. And they go deeper and deeper into the abyss until eventually they encounter the Balrog, who is the great fiery demon of the abyss. And it is there that Gandalf falls. He sacrifices himself to save the rest of the Fellowship. And we later learn in the second film, The Two Towers, what happened between Gandalf and the Balrog. And whether it's from the perspective of the rest of the Fellowship or Gandalf's perspective himself, what happens is Gandalf defeats the Balrog in the deepest dungeons and the highest peaks, but he dies. Gandalf the Grey dies. And if you remember the scene from The Two Towers, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas are looking for the two hobbits, Merry and Pippin, in Fangorn Forest, and they encounter the White Wizard, whom they believe is Saruman, because he's the White Wizard. Saruman is the White Wizard, and in this resplendence and stuff, and they try to attack him, and he repels their attack, and he reveals himself that he is Gandalf. And Aragorn says, it cannot be, right? And then so Gandalf tells them the tale, how he defeated the Balrog. He struck down his foe, but then death took him. But then he had been sent back until his task is done. And when they say Gandalf, he says, yes, Gandalf. Gandalf the Grey. That's what they called me. That was my name. And Gimli's all happy, and he's like, yeah, Gandalf, I'm so pleased to see him. And he says, and then Gandalf says, I am Gandalf the White. The significance of this cannot be overstated. Gandalf does not become Gandalf the White because he integrates the Balrog. He has to defeat the Balrog. He has to vanquish his foe. But that's not enough, because the foe, the shadow, was an aspect, a mirror of Gandalf the Grey. To vanquish one's foe means to vanquish one's self, an aspect of one's self. What had been obscuring oneself, what had made one only a gray base. Gandalf the White returns after Gandalf the Grey perishes. Gandalf the Grey is the bottle. And what is released from the vault, what is released from the bottle, what is released from the gray vessel is integrated and added to the new self. And it becomes the new home base, the new base. The leveled up Gandalf, who left home base Gandalf the Grey, but returns Gandalf the White. From gray to white is a process of purification, and that purification takes place by following one's bliss and descending into the abyss and facing one's shadow and eradicating that shadow and releasing what the shadow had been guarding and hoarding and coveting in the vault. But here, because we are focusing on this third aspect, the 12 can be honed down into what really matters, into 3 steps. And those 3 steps are sacrifice, death, and birth. They're the 3 factors of the Alm of life, the 3 factors of evolution and the revolution of the consciousness. And they are brilliantly portrayed in The Lord of the Rings through the character of Gandalf, but also through the overarching story of the ring itself. The shadow must die, yes. And as the shadow dies, a part of the false self dies. And as a part of the false self dies, what is released becomes integrated into the true self. That's Gandalf the Grey becoming Gandalf the White. And of course, we have to do this over and over and over many times. It's not enough just to face your fear. It's not enough just to face your shadow and analyze it and understand it and think, oh, okay, I know my dark side now and I'll integrate my dark side. That's a lot of what Jungian psychologists believe and teach and preach. And what people talk about shadow work, that's what they think they're doing. They're going from home base down to second base. Maybe they're going past first base in the process, but they're just bouncing back and forth between home base and second base, quote, doing their, quote, shadow work, but without sacrifice and death. So what's the sacrifice part? Well, the sacrifice is following your bliss, is abandoning the home base, abandoning Gandalf the Grey, throwing caution to the wind, saying, whatever it is that I am now and the comfort and the security that I am and I have, we talked about this in following your bliss. You got to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. You got to let go. You got to be prepared to give up everything that you have, everything that's important to you, to follow your heart, to follow your what drives you, to follow your bliss. That's a sacrifice, because your bliss is not yours. Your bliss, you receive your bliss. And we talked about this. The bliss comes through you, not from you, through you. You receive your bliss. And as you receive your bliss, you give it to others, which is also another sacrifice. It's sacrifice. You're sacrificing yourself. And then in the course of doing this, you have to face your shadow. You have to go explore the abyss. You have to see that which is hoarding and guarding what is of value to the true hero. And you step up to the plate as Gandalf the Grey and sacrifice yourself and face to kill the Balrog, to vanquish the Balrog. And in the process, you sacrifice yourself as Gandalf the Grey, but return. Remember, we're returning home. That's what this is all about, the return. And you return, you know, the conquering hero, right? You return as the conquering hero because you've actually conquered something. And what have you conquered? You conquered yourself, an aspect of your false self. This is the whole point of the heroic journey.